Welcome back to The Deep Dive. Today, we're taking a close look at India's evolving ties across the American continent, specifically during 2023.
That's right.
Our sources, well, they're from an official annual report, and they give us this really detailed picture, high-level visits, surprising tech collaborations, cultural stuff too.
Yeah, a lot in there.
Our aim, as always, is to help you cut through the noise, get to the heart of what's truly important in this rapidly changing diplomatic landscape.
Indeed. And what's most striking, I think, from these sources is truly the sheer breadth and depth of India's engagement. It's far more than just maintaining traditional alliances.
Right.
It's about proactively charting a new, sort of futuristic roadmap, exploring fresh domains of cooperation, and really strengthening multifaceted partnerships that stretch, well, all the way from North to South America. We'll be looking for the underlying patterns, those may be unexpected connections, and critically the why behind this significant diplomatic push.
Okay, so let's unpack this. You'll see how India is truly making its mark, building connections that resonate from Washington, D.C., all the way down to Montevideo.
Absolutely.
Get ready for some genuine insights, because we're about to dive deep into India's 2023 engagements across the Americas. Our journey into India's growing presence in the Americas naturally starts with its most established and, well, rapidly evolving relationship, the United States.
The cornerstone, really.
Our sources clearly emphasize a new momentum and a futuristic roadmap. So when we hear phrases like new momentum, what does that actually mean for the India-US partnership in 2023? What's the substance?
That's a great question. This new chapter you mentioned, what the sources really underscore is a remarkable frequency and level of high-level dialogue that truly redefine their comprehensive global strategic partnership.
Okay.
I mean, consider the two critical leader-level engagements. First, the Prime Minister's historic state visit to the U.S. in June. That unequivocally elevated the relationship to new heights.
Right, the state visit.
And second, President Joseph R. Biden's visit to India for the G20 summit in September. Now, these weren't just symbolic gestures, photo ops.
No.
They were instrumental, really, in ushering in a profoundly new phase. And it featured concrete deliverables. Things like ISRO signing on to the Artemis Accords with NASA.
Ah, the space cooperation angle.
Exactly. Signaling a major leap there. Beyond that, there were expensive discussions aimed at not just boosting commercial ties, but genuinely diversifying defense cooperation, moving beyond sort of mere transactional relationships.
Okay, so real substance.
Real substance. To illustrate the magnitude, the Prime Minister's state visit in June, that was a historic first, culminating in a substantial bilateral meeting with President Biden, and, notably, an address to a joint session of the U.S. Congress. That's a rare honor, making him one of the few world leaders to do that more than once.
That is significant.
It is. His itinerary also included valuable interactions with industry captains, thought leaders, and, importantly, the vibrant Indian community in the U.S. That highlights the deep people-to-people connections that, truly underpin this relationship.
Yeah, that's key.
Then later, President Biden's visit to New Delhi in September for the G20 Leaders Summit that marked his inaugural trip to India as head of state.
Right.
Their bilateral meeting during the summit served as a crucial platform to showcase the tangible progress achieved since the June visit. So, follow through.
Good.
And beyond these direct bilateral exchanges, both leaders remained actively engaged in multilateral forums like the Quad Leader Summit and the G7 Summit.
Okay.
The strategic intent, as the report indicates, is clearly to move beyond just transactional ties to a partnership addressing the shared priorities of the 21st century. It's about laying a foundation for truly comprehensive global strategic cooperation.
So a long-term vision.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's a calculated move, I think, to secure future influence and resilience by fostering genuine interdependence.
And it wasn't just the very top, right? The report seems to paint a picture of constant, detailed engagement across the board.
Absolutely. That's a key point.
And here's where it gets really interesting, I think. Technology collaboration emerging as a central pillar. Tell us about ICT and its significance. What is ICT?
Right, ICT, the Initiative for Critical and Emerging Technologies. It's unequivocally a key platform, really designed for building resilient, high-tech supply chains.
Okay, supply chains. Crucial these days.
Hugely crucial. This represents a critical area of focus, fundamentally moving both countries into new, sort of cutting-edge domains of collaboration. We're talking fields like semiconductors,
Big one.
advanced telecom systems, space technology, quantum computing, AI, defense, the whole gamut of future tech.
Wow.
And the sources specifically cite key outcomes, most notably significant investment announcements by 5 major U.S. semiconductor companies. And these aren't just announcements, they're currently under active implementation.
So money is actually flowing.
Yes, signifying real, tangible progress on the ground.
Can you give us examples?
Sure. To give you a sense of the scale, we're talking major commitments here. You have Micron, Lam Research, Applied Materials, Advanced Micro Devices, Microchip Technology.
Big names.
Big names. Collectively, they announced billions in investments. I think the report tallies at over $4 billion alongside these ambitious initiatives. Like Lam Research's plan to train an astonishing 60,000 engineers in India.
60,000. Wow.
Yeah. So this isn't just about selling chips. It's fundamentally about building a shared, resilient tech future.
Right.
Now, the underlying why behind this intense focus on critical technologies is multifaceted. It's about strategic independence, ensuring supply chain resilience in an increasingly volatile global landscape, and crucially, future economic competitiveness for both nations.
Makes sense.
And this focus was really highlighted by the inaugural IC8 meeting in Washington, D.C., co-chaired by the national security advisors of both countries. That shows the high level of commitment and strategic intent.
Top-level buy-in.
Absolutely. And the ongoing nature of these discussions, they were even reviewing preparations for the Prime Minister's visit as part of ICT. That further signifies the continuity and the high-level attention given to this really critical area of cooperation.
Defense cooperation, too, seems to have taken a leap forward. The report suggests moving beyond just purchases to actually linking industries. What's the new dimension there?
Yeah, that's another significant shift. The new dimension in defense cooperation is a strong and explicit focus on facilitating technology transfer, promoting co-production, and fostering innovation linkages.
Okay, so not just buying off the shelf.
Exactly. This marks a significant evolution, going well beyond simple defense trade, which incidentally already registered robust growth. I think the bilateral trade overall reached almost USD 200 billion.
Wow, huge number.
Huge number. But in defense specifically, the Defense Industrial Roadmap is a very significant outcome of this new approach. It was an agreement forged during U.S. Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin's visit to New Delhi back in June.
So what does that roadmap entail practically?
Well, to provide a couple of striking examples, consider the truly unprecedented step of the U.S. government granting a manufacturing license to Hindustan Aeronautics Limited, HAL,
Okay.
for GE Aerospace Ltd's F414 engines. Now, this is monumental because these engines will power the indigenization of India's Tejas Mk2 fighter aircraft.
Ah, the Tejas program. That's a game changer for India's domestic defense manufacturing.
Absolutely, a huge boost. Furthermore, the India-U.S. Defense Acceleration Ecosystem, known as INDIUSX, was launched.
INDIUSX.
Yes, it's specifically designed to promote defense innovation by actively involving the private sector and academia from both countries.
Interesting. So bringing in startups and universities.
Exactly. And INDIUSX has already announced 2 significant challenges for innovators, focused on critical areas like maritime intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance, and underwater communication.
Okay, cutting-edge stuff.
Very much so. And beyond this industrial collaboration, the intensification of joint military exercises is also a clear sign of deepening ties. We saw major exercises like COPE India for the Air Forces, the largest U.S. participation ever, I believe, Youth Upyas for the Armies, conducted in Alaska, Vajra Prohar for Special Forces in Meghalaya, and of course the multilateral Malabar Naval Exercise off Australia.
So a lot more joint training.
A lot more. It really intensifies interoperability. This whole package, this holistic engagement, it signals a much deeper, more integrated defense relationship, moving towards shared capabilities, shared industrial-based development, rather than just that old buyer-seller dynamic.
Right.
It's a fundamental shift towards co-creation and mutual strategic benefit.
Beyond defense and tech, which are clearly huge, the sheer volume of ministerial interactions and other collaborations mentioned is impressive. What else stood out in the India-U.S. relationship from the report?
Yeah, what's truly fascinating there is the sheer comprehensiveness of the engagement. It cuts across almost every conceivable sector, indicating a truly mature, multifaceted partnership.
Okay.
The U.S. notably supported India's G20 presidency throughout the year, which was important. And both leaders, as we discussed, participated in key multilateral forums like the Quad Leaders Summit and G7 Summit. But digging into the specifics, under trade and economic cooperation, foreign direct investment, FDI, continued to grow robustly in both directions. That's a healthy sign.
Definitely.
And a significant achievement, I think, was the resolution of 7 outstanding bilateral trade disputes at the WTO. The report describes this with a forward-looking approach. It's a clear sign of a mature relationship, one capable of tackling challenges constructively.
Good to see disputes being resolved.
Absolutely. In the telecom sector, focused efforts led to the establishment of two public-private task forces, one dedicated to Open RAN, the other to R&D in 5G and 6G. Clearly forward-looking initiatives aimed at future communication technologies.
Oh.
India also joined the U.S.-led Plurilateral Minerals Security Partnership. That signals cooperation in developing diverse and sustainable critical energy mineral supply chains globally. Very important for the green transition.
Right. Critical minerals are key. What about energy and climate more broadly?
Huge area. In energy and climate, collaboration continued on vital areas like clean energy, emerging fuels like green hydrogen, the decarbonization of end-use sectors, R&D for smart grids and energy storage, and carbon capture, utilization, and storage, CCUS. The Renewable Energy Technology Action Platform, RETAP, was specifically set up. That's aimed to enable the deployment and scaling of green clean hydrogen, wind energy, and long-duration energy storage.
So practical platforms for action.
Yes. And backing this up, an ambitious green transition fund of USD $1 billion was also agreed upon, $500 million from each side. That demonstrates serious financial commitment.
$1 billion is serious money.
It is. And a very practical outcome from this is the plan to deploy 10,000 made-in-India electric buses in India, which underscores tangible cooperation in decarbonizing transport.
Great example. Okay, what about space, S&T, IT?
Right. Moving to space, science and technology, and IT cooperation. Beyond ISRO signing the Artemis Accords, which you mentioned,
Yeah.
ISRO and NASA further agreed to develop a strategic framework for human spaceflight cooperation, and also to undertake a joint effort to the International Space Station, possibly sending an Indian astronaut there.
Wow, that's ambitious.
Very. And strong, growing ties with the U.S. National Science Foundation, NSF, led to the expansion of existing R&D linkages through multiple implementation agreements. These cover computing, communications, cybersecurity, sustainability, green tech, intelligent transportation, a wide range. And a notable initiative announced in June was the India-U.S. Science and Technology Endowment Fund, USD $2 million, specifically for joint development and commercialization of AI and quantum technologies focused on healthcare.
AI and quantum and healthcare, very cutting edge.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Then under health and education, the fifth India-U.S. Health Dialogue discussed crucial areas like pandemic preparedness and response lessons learned, perhaps.
Yeah.
Under the Cancer Moonshot Initiative, India's Department of Biotechnology and the U.S. National Cancer Institute will work together to expand access to cancer prevention, screening, treatment, and care.
Important collaboration.
Very important. And education exchanges remain incredibly robust. Over 260,000 Indian students are currently pursuing programs in U.S. higher educational institutions.
Huge number.
Massive. The India-U.S. Working Group on Education and Skill Development was launched to focus specifically on skilling, vocational education, and institutional matchmaking between universities. Furthermore, the Council of Indian Institutes of Technology, the IITs, and the Association of American Universities signed an OU to establish an Indo-U.S. Global Challenges Institute. This has significant funding from both sides, bringing together leading research institutions for collaborations in sustainable energy, agriculture, health, critical tech. A big challenge.
Like a really broad research partnership.
It is. Finally, in people-to-people ties, a significant move to strengthen these bonds is the U.S. opening new consulates in Bengaluru and Ahmedabad, with India reciprocating by planning one in Seattle.
Makes sense with the growing diaspora and travel.
Exactly. And a tangible cultural cooperation highlight was the return of 105 trafficked antiquities by the U.S. government. That's part of ongoing efforts to return illegally acquired cultural artifacts.
That's always good to see.
It is. So this comprehensive engagement, as the sources reveal, across such diverse sectors, it truly indicates a mature partnership. It's not just about bilateral trade or defense anymore, but about, co-creating solutions for global challenges and leveraging mutual strengths on a really holistic scale.
A truly multidimensional relationship then.
Absolutely.
Now, while India's ties with the U.S. surge to these new heights, our deep dive reveals a more complex, sometimes challenging picture unfolding north of the border with Canada.
A different dynamic there.
The sources point to strong underlying connections people to people, economic but also significant diplomatic, let's say, headwinds in 2023. What exactly happened, according to the report, and how did it impact the broader relationship?
You're right. The relationship with Canada, While undeniably rooted in those strong diaspora connections and robust economic ties, it indeed faced significant headwinds in 2023.
Okay.
The sources note Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's participation in the G20 Leaders Summit, which suggests, a continuation of high-level engagement on that front.
Mm-hmm.
However, immediately following that mention, the report flags, and I'm quoting here, that the statement and allegations by Prime Minister Trudeau in the Canadian Parliament in September were rejected.
Right. That was a major point of friction.
It was. And this really raises a crucial question about how these underlying diplomatic tensions profoundly impacted the broader areas of cooperation between the two countries.
So how does the report frame India's response or position?
Well, to elaborate on the specific content from the report, it explicitly details that India, quote, continued to engage with the government of Canada to address our national security concerns,
Oh, okay.
and asked them to deny space to anti-India and extremist elements operating from Canadian soil. So that's India's stated position and request.
Mm-hmm.
Furthermore, it mentions a brief suspension and partial resumption of visa operations. And it notes this occurred following an assessment of the security situation and credible threats to Indian diplomats in Canada.
Right. The visa issue.
Yeah. Now, as objective observers looking at this official report, we're presenting these facts as stated in the source material naturally without endorsing either side's political
Of
stance.
course.
But it's clear, reading this, that these specific events unequivocally presented significant friction and complicated the bilateral mechanisms that are normally relied upon for smooth diplomatic functioning.
So it definitely had an impact.
Oh, undoubtedly. This section clearly indicates that despite the underlying strengths, these political disagreements created tangible obstacles in the relationship during this period.
Despite these challenges, though, were there still areas of active engagement between India and Canada? Did the friction completely halt everything, or did some things continue?
That's the fascinating part. No, it didn't completely halt everything. What's striking here is that even amidst the undeniable diplomatic strain, there was a continuous and noteworthy level of dialogue and engagement, particularly at the ministerial and official levels. It demonstrates the resilience, perhaps, of the relationship's foundational elements.
Okay, so what kind of engagement continued?
Well, for instance, Foreign Minister Melanie Joly and our External Affairs Minister co-chaired the India-Canada Strategic Dialogue in New Delhi back in February. That signifies ongoing high-level strategic discussions. Later, the Minister of Commerce and Industry co-chaired the 6th Ministerial Dialogue on Trade and Investment, the MBTI, in Ottawa. And significantly, he was accompanied by a substantial Indian business delegation.
Ah, so the business side kept pushing.
It indicates a continued push for economic ties, yes. We also see participation in various G20 meetings throughout the year by a range of Canadian ministers, which kept channels of communication open across different sectors.
Right.
And visits by provincial premiers, like Scott Moe of Saskatchewan, also took place. So engagement continued at multiple levels.
What about the core trade and people-to-people numbers? Did they hold up?
These seem quite resilient, actually. In terms of trade and people-to-people connections, the numbers speak volumes. Bilateral trade during April-September 2023-24, the period covered, stood at USD 3.92 billion.
Okay.
Crucially, portfolio investments from Canada into India increased to over USD 75 billion. That's a testament to India's economic growth potential, attracting significant Canadian capital despite the political noise.
75 billion is a huge investment figure.
It really is. The report highlights that over 600 Canadian companies have a presence in India, with more than 1,000 actively pursuing business opportunities. That illustrates deep commercial linkages. And on the people-to-people front, ties remain incredibly robust. Canada hosts one of the largest Indian diasporas globally, about 1.6 million persons of Indian origin.
Yeah, a huge community.
And India also continues to be Canada's largest source of foreign students. An estimated 230,000 Indian students are there. Culturally, the ICCR and McGill University signed an MOU for a chair on Indian studies.
Okay.
So this demonstrates that despite the high-level political disagreements, the underlying economic and social ties, the very fabric of the relationship, you could say, continue to see active engagement. It highlights the multi-layered and often resilient nature of these bilateral relationships.
Interesting how those tracks can sometimes run parallel, even when there's friction at the top.
Exactly. It's often the case in international relations.
Okay, moving on. Let's shift to a key multilateral framework, the Quad. That's India, the U.S., Japan, and Australia. It seems to have gained significant momentum in 2023. What was the central agenda, according to the report, and what are the broader implications? What does its activity signify for the Indo-Pacific?
right? The Quad. To connect this to the bigger picture we've been discussing, the Quad's agenda in 2023 clearly centered on deepening cooperation across crucial domains. But very importantly, it also focused on delivering tangible public goods to countries throughout the Indo-Pacific region.
Public goods.
Yeah.
What does that mean in this context?
It means things like infrastructure development, providing vaccines, improving maritime security, offering disaster relief, promoting digital connectivity, things that benefit the wider region, not just the Quad members themselves.
Got it. So moving beyond just security talk.
Precisely. This indicates a very deliberate and significant move beyond mere dialogue to tangible action and demonstrable impact across the region.
Okay.
The sources specifically highlight that the Quad Leaders Summit was held in Hiroshima, Japan back in May. During this summit, the leaders engaged in extensive discussions about regional developments, yes. But crucially, they explored ways to deepen existing Quad cooperation across a wide array of areas.
Such as?
Well, these included vital domains like climate and clean energy, health security, critical infrastructure development, enhancing connectivity, space cooperation, cybersecurity, and critical and emerging technologies, themes we've seen elsewhere too.
Recurring themes.
Yes. And at the conclusion of this summit, a comprehensive joint statement and a dedicated vision statement were issued. These articulated their shared vision for the Quad itself and for the broader Indo-Pacific region.
So setting out their stall, so to speak.
Exactly. This signals that the Quad is evolving into a more operational platform. It's transitioning from primarily strategic alignment, countering shared challenges, to actively engaging in collaborative problem solving for both regional and global issues.
Right.
And that explicit focus on providing public goods positions the Quad as a constructive and beneficial force in the region, rather than, say, solely a security-oriented grouping, although that element remains.
And beyond the Leader Summit, were there regular ministerial engagements driving this agenda? How did they ensure these commitments actually translated into action?
Absolutely. Yeah. The sustained engagement at the foreign minister level was a crucial driver for the Quad's agenda in 2023. It underscores the regularity and the importance attached to these interactions.
Okay.
Their first meeting took place in New Delhi in March, conveniently on the sidelines of the G20 foreign ministers meeting that India was hosting. The second crucial meeting occurred in September in New York, again on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly. So leveraging these multilateral gatherings.
Makes sense.
During this New York meeting, they issued a significant joint statement. It notably reaffirmed the importance of upholding mutually determined rules, norms, and standards, emphasizing a commitment to a rules-based international order.
Standard language, but important.
Important reinforcement, yes. They also committed to deepening Quad cooperation within the international system and reiterated their commitment to the UN Charter. Now, what's particularly noteworthy from India's perspective, and a key Indian aspiration, is that they explicitly noted their commitment to advancing a comprehensive UN reform agenda. And this includes the expansion of both permanent and non-permanent seats of the UN Security Council.
So alignment on UNSC reform. That's significant.
It's a very powerful signal when these four major democracies align on such a critical global governance issue.
Definitely. Were there practical activities, too, beyond the statements?
Yes, indeed. Beyond these high-level ministerial dialogues, 2023 saw numerous practical Quad workshops and activities on the ground. These included events under their established working groups on climate, cybersecurity, counterterrorism, and humanitarian assistance and disaster relief, or HADR.
So operational collaboration.
Operational collaboration, exactly, showcasing that practical dimension. Moreover, the first batch of Quad STEM Fellows commenced their academic courses in fall 2023 in the USA. That's a concrete investment in future talent and collaboration in science and tech. The Quad Investors Network, QIN, also organized a Quad Investment and Technology Dialogue, highlighting efforts to link private sector innovation and capital across the four countries.
Okay.
So this sustained engagement at the foreign minister level, combined with these practical initiatives like STEM fellowships and investor networks, it clearly demonstrates the institutionalization of Quad cooperation. It's becoming more embedded, reinforcing its long-term strategic relevance for the Indo-Pacific.
Now, this is where it gets truly fascinating, I think. The report dedicates a significant section to India's relations with Latin America and the Caribbean LAC. It calls it unprecedented growth with a renewed momentum.
It really stands out in the report.
On the surface, that sounds like a major strategic shift. But what are the real drivers behind this renewed momentum? And are there particular challenges unique to engaging with such a diverse and, well, geographically distant region for India?
You've hit on a critical point. India's strategy in the Americas in 2023 extends far beyond its traditional, maybe primary focus on the U.S. and Canada.
Right.
The sources present a deliberate and remarkably comprehensive outreach to all 33 countries across the vast Latin American and Caribbean region. This truly marks a significant reprioritization in India's foreign policy.
33 countries. That's ambitious.
It is. And this unprecedented growth isn't accidental. It's clearly driven by a powerful combination of high-level political will from India, coupled with strategic economic and development partnerships designed for long-term engagement.
So top-level push.
Definitely. To provide some concrete examples of this high-level commitment, we saw the presidents from both Guyana and Suriname visiting India. The Guyanese president, Dr. Irfan Ali, was notably the chief guest at the Pravasi Bharatiya Diwas, the diaspora convention.
Recognizing the diaspora link there.
Exactly. Furthermore, our external affairs minister paid his first-ever official visits to a number of key countries in the region, including Guyana, Panama, Colombia, and the Dominican Republic. These mark significant diplomatic milestones. The President of India also made her maiden state visit to Suriname.
Okay, a lot of firsts.
A lot of firsts. This broad and deep level of engagement across multiple levels of government and leadership, it underscores India's ambition to significantly expand its global footprint and diversify its partnerships. It's a recognition of the immense economic and strategic potential of the LAC region.
Which is often overlooked.
Often overshadowed by other geopolitical priorities, yes. The challenge, of course, as you hinted, is maintaining this momentum across such a diverse and distant geographical spread. But India appears to be tackling this with sort of tailored approaches for different countries and subregions.
It seems economic engagement is a major driver here too, with trade surging. How significant are these figures, and what do they tell us about India's economic strategy in LAC?
Indeed, economic engagement is absolutely a major driver, and the figures are remarkably significant. Bilateral trade with Latin American countries, LAC, surged to almost USD 50 billion during the financial year 2022-23.
50 billion, that's substantial.
It's a very substantial figure, indicating not just potential, but already strong and growing commercial linkages. It reflects a healthy appetite for goods and services in both directions. To illustrate this further, the 9th CII India LAC Conclave, a major business and economic forum, was held in New Delhi. Its theme was Furthering Economic Partnerships for Shared and Sustained Growth.
Okay.
And it saw enthusiastic participation, high-level delegations, senior government officials, business people from both India and various LAC countries. This demonstrates that India isn't just seeking political goodwill or symbolic gestures in the region.
Right, it's about business too.
It's actively building concrete economic bridges, opening up new markets for Indian goods and services, and importantly, attracting valuable investment into India from these diverse economies. This economic dimension is truly fundamental to India's broader diplomatic strategy in the Americas.
Beyond trade, you mentioned development partnerships. India seems to be expanding its diplomatic footprint and offering development assistance. What does this look like on the ground?
That's a crucial aspect of India's evolving strategy in the LAC region, yes. The sources explicitly state that the newly opened Indian embassy in the Dominican Republic was formally inaugurated. That in itself is a testament to India's deepening commitment to strengthening ties and physically expanding its diplomatic presence across the continent.
A new embassy is a clear signal.
It is. And beyond mere diplomatic representation, India continued its Development Partnership Association with the Latin America and Caribbean region through direct assistance, primarily in the form of grants and concessional lines of credit.
Okay. Can you give an example?
Sure. A prime, tangible example of this is the India-built ocean-going passenger-cum-cargo ferry, the MV Malisha, which was delivered to Guyana.
Yes, the ferry.
This was funded by a USD 12.71 million line of credit cum grant from India. Now, this isn't just a symbolic gesture. It's a direct, practical delivery of assistance that tangibly impacts local communities by improving transportation and connectivity.
Real infrastructure.
Real infrastructure. This strategy positions India not as a distant donor, but as a reliable and responsive development partner. It offers tailored assistance that directly addresses specific needs and infrastructure gaps in these countries. And that enhances goodwill and fosters long-term, mutually beneficial engagement.
The Voice of Global South Summit is mentioned repeatedly across various country entries in the LAC section. What was its role in India's engagement with the region? Was it primarily symbolic, or did it yield concrete outcomes?
It's fascinating how India leveraged the Voice of Global South Summit, VOGSS, as a central plank of its engagement with the LAC region in 2023.
Mm-hmm.
The summit, convened by India, served as a crucial and unifying platform for extensive discussions with developing nations from around the world, not just LAC.
Right.
But its repeated mention across numerous LAC country entries, with participation from presidents, prime ministers, various ministers from countries like Ecuador, Peru, Uruguay, Venezuela, Belize, Costa Rica, El Salvador, Haiti, Jamaica, Nicaragua, Panama, St. Lucia, just to name a few.
Wow, broad participation.
Very broad. It highlights its profound significance and reach within the region.
So what happened at these summits?
Well, to give you a clearer picture, for example, the president of Ecuador and the executive vice president of Venezuela participated in the leaders' session of the first VOGSS.
Okay.
Moreover, ministers from across various sectors, health, finance, education, energy from many different LAC nations participated virtually in both the first and second VOGSS editions held during the year.
Mm-hmm.
They engaged in discussions on critical themes directly relevant to their development. Themes like human resource development and capacity building, or affordable and inclusive energy transition for sustainable development.
So sharing experiences and best practices.
Exactly. This platform allowed India to actively foster solidarity and demonstrate leadership among developing countries. It provided a dedicated forum to address shared challenges and promote South-South cooperation.
Right.
This, in turn, significantly strengthened India's diplomatic influence and standing in the region. It extended its soft power beyond traditional bilateral ties and positioned it as a champion for the Global South. So I'd say it was both symbolic in uniting the Global South and concrete in fostering these thematic discussions and identifying shared priorities.
Okay, let's zoom into South America now. Argentina, for instance, saw its bilateral trade with India double, the report says. That's a huge jump. What's driving that, and what else made their relationship flourish, as the report puts it?
Argentina's relationship with India is indeed described as flourishing, and this significant growth very much leveraged India's G20 presidency. That provided numerous opportunities for high-level exchanges and interactions.
Mm-hmm.
The doubling of bilateral trade from about USD $3 billion in 2019 to USD $6.4 billion in 2022 is a clear and compelling indicator of these enhanced economic ties. This isn't just a temporary surge. It seems to reflect deeper structural connections being built.
Okay. Well, what else besides trade?
Well, beyond the impressive trade figures, our sources detail several significant agreements and collaborations. For example, a Social Security agreement, an SSA, was signed.
What does that do?
It's crucial for facilitating workers' benefits, protecting the interests of professionals temporarily posted in the other country, and generally improving labor mobility between the two nations.
Okay. Practical for people working across borders.
Very practical. An India-Argentina Center of Excellence in IT, or CEI, was notably inaugurated in Buenos Aires in April. That signifies a push into advanced technology cooperation.
Mm-hmm.
There was also a specific implementing arrangement on academic cooperation signed under a pre-existing defense MAU. This indicates a broadening of defense ties to include knowledge sharing and training, not just hardware.
Right.
And in a very concrete development in defense, the first commercial agreement in the sector was signed between Hindustan Aeronautics Limited, HAL, and the Argentine Air Force. This was for helicopter spares and engine maintenance.
Ah, so HAL is exporting services now too.
Exactly. A significant step in defense industrial collaboration. All this demonstrates a clear strategic intent from both sides, I think, to diversify the relationship and tap into new markets for both defense and technology, moving well beyond just traditional commodity trade.
Brazil and India celebrated 75 years of diplomatic relations. That's a significant milestone. How did they deepen ties in 2023, especially given Brazil is taking over the G20 presidency from India?
Yes, the relationship with Brazil deepened considerably. It was marked both by that commemoration of 75 years of diplomatic ties and a series of high-level exchanges and regular meetings across their various institutional mechanisms of cooperation.
Mm-hmm.
The Prime Minister met President Lula da Silva twice, as you noted. First on the sidelines of the G7 summit, and then again very visibly on the sidelines of the G20 summit in New Delhi. That's where the Prime Minister formally handed over the G20 gavel to President Lula, signifying Brazil's upcoming G20 presidency. A key moment.
Yeah, symbolic handover. What about substance?
Well, what's fascinating here is that the deepening of ties goes beyond mere economic engagement, which is also growing strongly. Brazil's explicit support for India's candidature for a non-permanent UNSC seat for the 2028-29 term It's a major diplomatic win for India.
Support for the Security Council seat, okay?
It indicates a strong alignment on global governance issues between these two major developing economies. Both sides were also founding members of the Global Biofuels Alliance,
Ah, yes, the GBA launched at the G20.
an important initiative announced during India's G20 presidency, which underscores shared leadership on climate action and renewable energy. They also welcomed the establishment of the India-Brazil Business Forum as a dedicated platform for private sector collaboration.
Good for business ties.
Definitely. In the defense sector, there were significant high-level exchanges, including the Brazilian Army commander and a Navy delegation visiting India. And an Indian naval ship, INS Tarini, made a port call in Rio de Janeiro. Bilateral trade, as I mentioned, has been growing rapidly, almost doubling from about USD $7 billion in 2020-21 to over USD $16.5 billion in 2022-23. That's impressive growth.
Very impressive.
And Brazil also became a full member of the International Solar Alliance, ISA, further aligning on clean energy initiatives. So Brazil's explicit support for India's UNSC bid, their joint leadership in the Global Biofuels Alliance. It truly underscores a deepening strategic alignment on global governance and climate action, moving beyond just economic ties to a more comprehensive partnership.
What about other South American nations? Were there specific highlights worth noting beyond the big players like Argentina and Brazil?
Absolutely. The engagement with other South American nations was wide-ranging and, importantly, tailored to specific opportunities and needs in each country. This reflects India's flexible and pragmatic diplomatic approach across the continent.
Okay, like who?
Well, in Colombia, our external affairs minister paid his first official visit to the country. That itself was a significant step in their bilateral relations. During this visit, a cultural exchange program for 2023-26 was signed, indicating a focus on fostering deeper cultural understanding. Bilateral trade there reached approximately USD $3 billion. For Ecuador, the sources note significant advancement in relations. The Minister of State for External Affairs visited and met the then-president, and a crucial agreement was signed between the drug regulators of both countries to enhance pharmaceutical cooperation, which has direct public health benefits.
Pharma cooperation, interesting.
Yes. In Peru, the year 2023 marked the 60th anniversary of diplomatic relations. A notable highlight of their relationship was India's donation of 1,000 vials of human immunoglobulin. This was to help Peru tackle an outbreak of Guillain-Barré syndrome, showcasing a significant humanitarian aid component.
Nothing, okay.
For Uruguay, a delegation from India's upper house of parliament, the Rajya Sabha, participated in the World Summit of Committees of Future in Montevideo. This indicates engagement on forward-looking global issues and parliamentary diplomacy. Lastly, Venezuela. It hosted its executive vice president for the 9th CII-LAC conclave in India, and she was accompanied by a 25-member strong business delegation, underscoring continued economic engagement despite other challenges. Venezuela also participated as vice president of the ISA Permanent Committee for Latin America and the Caribbean.
Okay.
So the focus here across these nations is clearly on tailored cooperation. From health assistance in Peru to cultural exchange in Colombia, parliamentary links with Uruguay, and discussions on defense industry collaboration in Argentina, all reflecting India's flexible diplomatic approach designed to address specific needs and opportunities in each relationship.
Okay, shifting north slightly to Central America, Mexico holds a privileged partnership with India, according to the report. What makes this relationship stand out? Is it just about traditional trade, or is there something more going on there?
The India-Mexico relationship is truly multifaceted, and it continues to deepen through consistent high-level exchanges and, importantly, specific, innovative collaborations that make it stand out. It's definitely not just about traditional trade anymore.
Right.
The sources highlight that Mexico's then Foreign Minister, Marcelo Ebrard, visited India for the G20 Foreign Ministers meeting and held bilateral meetings across various sectors. A key outcome of this visit was the signing of an MOU between India's Council of Scientific and Industrial Research, CSIR, and the Mexican Agency for International Development Cooperation, AFX-SAIT.
Okay, S&T cooperation.
Yes. And notably, this included the announcement of a joint accelerator fund of USD $1 million. This demonstrates a strong focus on scientific and technological collaboration, moving towards joint innovation.
$1 million for joint projects.
Exactly. What's particularly noteworthy, I think, is the decentralized collaboration we're seeing.
Yeah.
The governor of Nuevo León, a major industrial state in Mexico, visited India for the CI and India-LAC conclave, and he met chief ministers in Uttar Pradesh and Maharashtra, leading to an FAQ between UP and Nuevo León on boosting cooperation in trade, tourism, pharmaceuticals, and health.
Ah, state-to-state partnerships. That's interesting.
It signifies a move towards these subnational partnerships, which can be incredibly dynamic and open new avenues for cooperation, bypassing some federal-level complexities, perhaps. The India-Mexico Research Consortium, IMRC, was also launched back in January, bringing together researchers, academicians, and scientists from both countries.
Okay.
So this focus on fostering innovation ecosystems, decentralized collaborations, coupled with vibrant cultural exchanges, it truly signals a mature and broad partnership that extends beyond traditional federal-level engagements.
And for the rest of Central America, what kind of engagement are we seeing there? Is it similar or different?
Relations with the rest of Central America also broadened significantly, but perhaps with more emphasis on India's development partnership approach. This focuses on practical cooperation, capacity building, and sharing India's development experiences.
Okay, example.
In El Salvador, the Minister of State for External Affairs visited, holding meetings with the president and various ministers. The foreign minister of El Salvador also visited India. So, good two-way political engagement. Guatemala celebrated its 50th anniversary of diplomatic relations with India. This was marked by another visit from the Minister of State, and India hosted a 15-member business delegation from Guatemala for the CII India-LAC conclave.
Right.
In Panama, the External Affairs Minister's first visit to the country was a significant milestone. And interestingly, the Chief Election Commissioner of India visited Panama and signed an MOU on electoral cooperation, showcasing collaboration on strengthening democratic institutions.
Electoral cooperation, that's specific.
It is. Belize notably signed an MOU on sharing India Stack.
Ah, India Stack again. Can you remind us what that is?
Right, India Stack, it's India's successful suite of digital public infrastructure. Think of it as foundational digital building blocks for things like seamless identity verification, instant payments like the UPI system, and secure data exchange like DigiLocker.
Okay, so digital foundations.
Exactly. It's seen as a potential game changer for countries looking to rapidly build their own digital economies and public services efficiently, kind of leapfrogging traditional development stages. So sharing this is a cutting-edge form of cooperation. India also provided Covovax vaccines and funded a maternal and child health project in Belize. Nicaragua also received a donation of 200,000 doses of Covovax vaccine from India, highlighting humanitarian health aid. And Costa Rica also saw a visit from India's Chief Election Commissioner and signed a similar MOU on electoral cooperation.
Okay.
So these relationships across Central America really underscore a commitment to practical cooperation, ranging from sharing digital solutions and health aid to electoral reforms, all reflecting India's comprehensive development partnership approach.
Finally, the Caribbean nations. There's a lot of activity mentioned in the report, particularly with Guyana and Suriname. What made 2023 so significant for them? And how does India's approach here differ, maybe, from its engagement with the larger economies we discussed?
The ties with Caribbean nations saw a very significant uplift in 2023. You're right. This was largely driven by those high-level visits we mentioned earlier, and, crucially, the implementation of tangible development projects on the ground.
Okay.
This signals a strategic focus on building sustainable, impactful partnerships, often leveraging India's own development experience and its growing technological strengths, tailored for smaller island nations, perhaps.
So tell us about Guyana and Suriname first.
Right. For Guyana, the connection is deep, partly due to the large Indian diaspora. President Dr. Muhammad Irfan Ali served as the chief guest for the 17th Pravasi Bharatiya Diwaz and received the prestigious Pravasi Bharatiya Salman Award. That underscores that diaspora connection. The External Affairs Minister's visit included chairing the 5th India-Guyana Joint Commission meeting and participating in the first-ever India-Guyana Business Roundtable, showcasing a concerted effort to boost economic ties beyond the traditional. Critically, that India-built MV Mal Lisha ferry, funded by the USD $12.71 million line of credit grant from India, was delivered and commissioned. That provides essential transportation services for people and goods.
Tangible benefit.
Very tangible. Furthermore, a solar home systems project, acquiring 30,000 units through a USD $7.2 million line of credit from India, began equipping households in remote areas with reliable electricity, a direct impact on quality of life.
Solar power. Okay. What about Suriname?
Suriname also saw an unprecedented level of engagement, again with strong historical and diaspora ties. The President of India visited as chief guest for the 150th anniversary celebrations of the arrival of Indian migrants in Suriname. She received Suriname's highest civilian honor during the visit.
High-level recognition.
Very high level.
Yeah.
India provided USD 600,000 worth of essential medicines for flood relief, demonstrating immediate humanitarian support. Crucial MOUs were signed on medical products regulation and recognizing the Indian pharmacopoeia, strengthening healthcare collaboration. President Santokhi announced the dedication of a 5-hectare plot of land for the construction of an Ayurveda hospital and herbal garden, indicating a long-term commitment to traditional Indian medicine. There were also MOUs on sharing India Stack and support for a project aiming to provide every student a computer, showcasing diverse assistance.
Ayurveda and computers, quite a mix.
It shows the breadth. The Dominican Republic saw the External Affairs Minister inaugurate India's new resident mission there, marking a new chapter. Its vice president paid the first ever visit by that office holder to India.
Okay.
This led to significant MOUs on medical products regulation, cooperation in marine sciences, and a partnership with IIT Delhi, signifying a strong commitment to scientific and educational collaboration. The EAM also unveiled a Mahatma Gandhi statue and inaugurated an India pavilion there.
Boosting visibility.
Yes. Trinidad and Tobago, TNT, signed an MOU on cooperation in the field of successful digital solutions, implemented at population scale for digital transformation, again, referencing India's digital public goods. This happened during their Minister of Digital Transformation's visit to India. And significantly, a team from the National Payments Council of India, NPCI, visited TNT to discuss introducing the UPI platform, India's groundbreaking instant digital payment system.
UPI going international.
Exploring it, yes. Antigua and Barbuda also signed an MOU on sharing India Stack. Barbados saw 2 projects completed under the India UNDP Fund, focusing on local content development in the energy sector and COVID-19 response. India's Exim Bank also completed a consultancy for setting up an export credit agency there.
Practical economic support.
Yes. And in Jamaica, a USD 1 million grant supported the Kitson Town Integrated Community Development Project. A first-of-its-kind Indian diaspora conference was also organized there. So what's fascinating here across the Caribbean is how India is leveraging its expertise in digital public infrastructure, like India Stack and UPI, and its comprehensive development model, using lines of credit, grants, health aid to forge strong, practical partnerships.
Right.
This approach moves beyond traditional aid, arguably, to focus on sustainable development and capacity building, creating lasting impact tailored to the specific needs and scale of these smaller nations. #, key cross-cutting themes and takeaways.
Okay, so if we step back now and look at India's overall engagement across the entire American continent in 2023, based on this report, what are the big patterns or themes that emerge? What truly defines this comprehensive push we've been talking about?
That's the key question, isn't it? What truly defines India's comprehensive outreach across the Americas in 2023? Well, I think a clear and undeniable pattern emerging from the source material is the sheer diplomatic frequency and breadth.
Just the amount of activity.
Exactly. The sources illustrate that high-level visits, ministerial dialogues, official consultations, they were constant throughout the year. It signals a sustained, deliberate engagement across North America, Central America, South America, and the Caribbean. It's not merely, a few isolated hotspots of engagement.
Yeah.
It really feels like a strategic continental push, reflecting a holistic and long-term vision for India's role in the region.
And it seems technology and innovation are a constant thread, a common denominator, whether we're talking about the U.S. relationship or partnerships with much smaller nations in the Caribbean. Is India positioning itself as a global tech partner through this?
I think that's a very accurate reading. Technology and innovation have clearly emerged as a foundational element of India's engagement across the Americas, not just some tangential side project.
Right.
This is evident across the entire spectrum of relationships documented in the sources. You have the high-profile initiative for critical emerging technologies, ICT, with the United States, covering semiconductors, AI, quantum, all the high-tech stuff. Then you have the establishment of an India-Argentina Center of Excellence in IT in Buenos Aires, the launch of the India-Mexico Research Consortium. These are focused on building R&D links.
Yeah.
And even in the Caribbean, we see this crucial embrace of India's groundbreaking India Stack digital solutions in countries like Antigua and Barbuda, Trinidad and Tobago, and Suriname. That demonstrates a commitment to sharing its digital transformation success.
Right, sharing the digital public infrastructure model.
Exactly. This comprehensive approach means India is indeed positioning itself as a key partner for digital transformation and technological advancement across the entire American continent, leveraging its own rapidly evolving tech ecosystem as a diplomatic tool, essentially.
And of course, the people-to-people connections seem to be the bedrock, the backbone of many of these relationships, especially in North America and the Caribbean. Is this more than just a nice to have? Is it actually a core strategic asset for India?
Oh, it's absolutely much more than a nice to have. I think the people-to-people connections are fundamentally the backbone of many of these relationships. They provide a deep, organic foundation for diplomatic ties and are, yes, a core strategic asset.
How so?
Well, the sources repeatedly highlight the profound impact of the deep-rooted Indian diaspora, particularly in both the U.S. and Canada, but also significantly in places like Guyana and Suriname.
Hmm.
The sheer number of Indian students pursuing higher education abroad, over 260,000 in the U.S., an estimated 230,000 in Canada, creates these enduring bonds and crucial future linkages between societies.
Right, future leaders and professionals.
Exactly. Cultural initiatives like the establishment of ICCR chairs for Indian studies at universities like McGill, or the significant return of trafficked antiquities by the U.S. government, further reinforce this crucial human element, building goodwill and understanding. And the Pravasi Bharatiya Divas celebrations, which saw the presidents from Guyana and Suriname as chief guests, are a powerful testament to the vital role the Indian diaspora plays in actively fostering and strengthening these international ties. So these aren't just government-to-government interactions. They are truly society-to-society connections driven by shared heritage, educational pursuits, cultural exchange, and family ties.
Finally, India seems to be taking on, or at least projecting, a significant leadership role for the Global South throughout this engagement. How does this manifest across the Americas based on the report?
India's evolving global positioning and its growing influence are very clear themes here, yes. Its successful leadership of the G20 in 2023, coupled with the convening of the Voice of Global South Summit twice during the year.
Right, the VOGSS.
It clearly positions India as a champion and a strong voice for developing nations on the world stage. And the broad and enthusiastic participation of Latin American and Caribbean countries in both editions of the VOGSS truly underscores this growing influence and the resonance of India's message in that region. India's consistent focus on South-South cooperation, its provision of development assistance, often framed as partnerships, and its willingness to share successful digital public infrastructure models, like India's Stack.
Yeah, that came up a lot.
It did, and it collectively showcases a distinct diplomatic approach, an approach that emphasizes shared development, mutual benefit, capacity building, rather than perhaps older models of aid. And this approach appears to resonate deeply with these nations, strengthening India's diplomatic footprint and solidifying its role as a leader of the Global South. #outro.
So what does this all mean for you listening in? Well, you've just received quite a masterclass, I think, on India's increasingly complex and vital relationships right across the Americas in 2023.
Mm-hmm.
A lot to digest.
From cutting-edge tech deals with the U.S. to practical humanitarian aid in Peru and these groundbreaking digital infrastructure agreements in the Caribbean, it's clear that India is actively, shaping a multipolar world, one deep dive at a time. Yeah, the sources really reveal a strategic, multi-layered engagement that goes well beyond the daily headlines. It connects critical geopolitical interest with practical, on-the-ground development and cooperation.
Right.
And it encourages us, I think, to look beyond maybe the dominant narrative sometimes and appreciate the nuanced interplay of economy, technology, culture, and diaspora ties in shaping international relations today. It provides a richer understanding of global dynamics.
As we wrap up this deep dive, here's something to consider. With India's rapidly expanding influence and this very deliberate outreach across the Americas, how might these strengthening ties reshape global power dynamics and maybe even economic corridors over the next decade?
That's the big question.
What new collaborations might emerge between India and nations across the Americas? And perhaps more importantly, how will they impact the lives of people in these diverse regions, from Alaska down to Argentina?
A lot to think about there.
Something to mull over until our next deep dive.